Spiritual Love, an Imago interview with Paula Smith.
Lily Cotilla is a PhD candidate in spiritual and somatic psychology and is working on her dissertation focused on premature ejaculation. Lily has a background in rape counseling and domestic violence. She has been in private practice in San Diego for 7 years. While spending much of her time working with couples and relationship issues, Lily has further specialized in men's sexual health, performance anxiety, delayed ejaculation, and premature ejaculation. This is our recent conversation.
I'd like to welcome you, Lily, to the Relationship Revolution. And
thanks so much, Paula.
I'm really excited that you're able to come on and talk with us about a topic that is really important. And, you know, I believe that we're in a huge cultural shift in terms of sex and sexuality. And so I'm really thrilled that you're able to come and share your expertise with us on the Relationship Revolution. You know, we've been talking about paradox, and I guess the paradox here is to have sex or not to have sex. So my first question is, how do you help couples with their sex life?
Well, first I want to say that hopefully we're in a sexual shift here, although sometimes it seems that in terms of what's happening in relationships, we're back in the days of the Puritans, but people are very uncomfortable talking about bedroom topics. You know, even people have been married 20 years, sometimes get more uncomfortable, whether that's about just following the grooves that have been created over the years, or fear of intimacy, or people becoming familiar with seeing their partners in certain roles, and then it's difficult to kind of switch gears and all of a sudden open up bedroom talk and physical intimacy language. So it's really important for couples, especially early on, to begin dialoguing, about sexual interests, about bodies, pleasure sites, possible fantasies. And we have a tendency as humans, I think, to skirt away from those topics. And a response might be given from a partner like, oh, I don't know my fantasy. Many women actually don't know their fantasies, and it takes some time getting in touch with them. And women's fantasies look very different from men's fantasies. Or if communication is opened up between the couple by asking questions like that, or babe, what feels good? Show me. Oh, it's good. It feels great. But there's not really a slowing down of time and getting into, well, it's fine. Okay, yeah. That touch might be great, but to really become vulnerable and express to a partner, like, babe, can you pinch me harder here, or move faster, or more pressure? We don't get into the intricacies of sexual language and view physical intimacy as a learning process between the couple. I think our mentality typically is such that an analogy I frequently use is buying a suit from Men's Warehouse versus getting a tailor-made unique suit. In this culture, we want to go in proving that we're great lovers and we give great blowjobs, or we're great at, fingering her. But it's really not about that, because we're not all a one-size-fits-all, type of deal. And so it's really about putting ego aside and becoming the student of our partner. The learning journey of her pleasure map or his pleasure map is so important.
Yeah, right. So how do people become emotionally intimate in the nude? And it sounds like you've alluded to a lot of that as you were beginning your talk. But is there, what does the process look like?
Well, it's a really humbling experience, and as I mentioned, putting ego aside, from both partners to be vulnerable and to make a request of what you would like more of. And then for the person who the request is being made to really go into a listening role and to hear the person is so important, because we often get defensive and, well, what do you mean go faster? I've been going fast. I wasn't fast enough. Or you had a girlfriend once who was kindly telling this older gentleman how she liked oral sex. And he said, I know what I've been doing. I've had oral sex for years. And she was like, okay, buddy, if you want to keep doing it your way, even though I've expressed you like it another way, then do it that way. But it's just really, it's tough, because especially in our primary relationship, because it's so vulnerable to put out there what we really want. And then if it's rejected, it can be a really long way to fall. But to communicating and really visiting the specifics, and it's not a one-time conversation that is to be had. And often I think people think that. They put out there like, oh, can you go faster? And then let's say he doesn't go fast enough for her. She can jump in and let him know, like, babe, in a gentle way. No criticism is really allowed, or should be allowed in the bedroom. Just gently guiding him or moving his hand to a position that's more stimulating for her. And ongoing dialogue. I mean, because one time we don't learn multiplication tables, in a 2-minute session, right? So it takes revisiting and revisiting, and the bodies change over time as well.
So exactly, the body does change, and our desires and our desires change and our longings change around sex. And so, do couples lose their connection, or is there a way to keep the spark?
Do couples lose the connection? Good question. And sometimes, do couples have the connection in the first place? I'm not sure what your experience has been, Paula. I'm not referring to in your personal life, but in your practice.
Well,
let's make that clear. I won't out you. But often in the beginning, I don't know if this is conditioning or what, but women will kind of fake it. We take a lot of stimulation to have great orgasms, and so in the beginning we're faking it, and then, which we should never do, and then 2 months later, all of a sudden we're needing a lot more work, and then the guy's like, "What's happened? What's going on? What's wrong with you?" Right? That's a common, and women do this to men all the time too, with like erection issues. What's wrong with you? But the reality is, there's nothing wrong with the individual. It's a couple dynamic that plays out, and it takes work. But so this connection in the beginning, has that been your experience, Paula, with couples? That they don't necessarily talk so much and disclose sexuality or what is really important to them?
Exactly. And what I find is that couples typically don't have a sexual language, or they have a language, and yet the language is mysterious to them. So they may use language that they're used to, but the partner may have a different understanding of what that particular word means, or how the partner is using that word. So, I when I start working with couples around issues of sex, I try and just have them get it all out. Just let's use as many words that you can come up with, or let's look at all the words that you come up with to describe sex.
Absolutely. And you bring up such a good point, too. All these cultures, when you look at language, like the Inuits, I think, have over, 100 words for snow, because it's a focus in their culture. And you would think with all the porn in this culture and, sexuality around us, that we'd have a lot of words and language for sex. But the reality is we really don't. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was never taught in school how to even about my body and what might be pleasurable and what I might communicate and what words to use. But I didn't even know, what strokes I liked or what my options were. I think that's another thing, is that people don't realize how many different hand techniques there are, for example, to pleasure a woman, or how many hand techniques there are to pleasure a man, or orally, how many different, fun things we can bring in. I mean, without learning these things, I mean, it's like, how are we supposed to know? And yet it seems that we just go through the motions of life and hopefully learn something along the way and, pretend to slap a label on ourselves like we're great lovers. But, I mean, it's like these things are Nestle chocolate, and we haven't experienced Godiva,
Right, right.
We just haven't been exposed.
Right. And, we're such a culture of shame around, sex and sexuality. And so, I find that, with the couples that I work with, that the first thing I need to do is normalize whatever the issue is. That there's no guidebook. I mean, we're gonna sit here.
There isn't. I was supposed. Nobody gave me that one. I wish I wish there was a guidebook, right?
Right. And we're gonna sit here and create one for you, one that works for you. It may not look like your parents' math,
Yeah.
but it's really a co-creating process, in that whatever you deal with, we can work through this together.
And you mentioned shame, Paula, and it's also been my experience that, and perhaps shame-based, but also a great amount of almost embarrassment. Even if people have been married, like I said, quite a while, it's still uncomfortable for people to really have dialogue about their bodies or their sexual desires, or for, like I mentioned before, a woman to admit a fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how are we going to use the, and the assumption is, at some point, we've all have had wounds, emotional, psychological wounds around ourselves, around our sexuality. So how do we use this sexual energy for the most profound healing of our wounds that all human beings experience? And how do we do that with a partner?
Well, I've designed this. It's really an amazing spiritual experience, and we often don't think of sexual energy and spiritual or life energy in the same context, but it really can be. I mean, sure, and we've got fun sex, hot sex, kinky sex, sensual sex, passionate, all these different types of sex we can have. But when all those manifests are stripped away and we are just there and raw and in our human sexual energy, it can be such a healing experience. And let me describe to you a specific process to help send love to those core wounds that you just mentioned. So first, the couple has to really set aside time for this particular type of sexual interaction. As they do a sexual interaction that is going to be a quickie, as they do a sexual interaction that might be an educational experience, so that the intention is known. Because if both people have a different idea of what's going to happen, then it's a setup for disappointment and failure. But so with this set as the intention, this spiritual healing, what the couple would do is they would identify their core wound. So if someone's had therapy, they probably know. If they have not, or they haven't thought about it in this sense before, they might ask themselves, what do they get triggered by, or what hurts their feelings, or what do they get mad about in their primary relationship? And they'll kind of just explore that theme. And once they identify examples, because I'll digress for 1 second. What happens in the bedroom is very parallel to what happens in our relationship outside of the bedroom. So we're just going to carry that on over here. So after they identify different scenarios that perhaps have upset them in the past, they'll look at those scenarios and they'll ask themselves the question, what is the common theme through these? And it's often that we go to blame or to finger pointing of our partners. It's more difficult to really go within ourselves, within our hearts, and ask ourselves the following question. what negative I statement do I make about myself that is not true, but what negative I statement do I make about myself or believe about myself in these themes of these experiences that I just recalled, for example. And you can funnel it down to core no matter what. And people will not always start off there. They'll say things like, well, he's mean to me. Well, that's about him. So what does that bring up for you? I'm unlovable. I'm not good enough. I'm not safe. They might say, I can't trust. That's kind of still about the other person. Making it about you is like, I can't trust. Can you think of any other core type sentences that we can throw in as examples?
Yeah, I'm not enough. I don't deserve it.
Exactly.
I think you said it. I can't trust. I'm not worthy. I'm too much
alone.
of a. I'm alone. I'm high maintenance or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so we don't consciously go there, when we're having these altercations or disagreements, but they're feeding them on a base level. So we identify what that I statement is. We also identify an emotion that we feel when we think about that. We may even go back between the ages of 0 and 10 and identify the very first time you remember feeling that way, with that emotion. And oftentimes it comes back to interactions with parents, right? Isn't that great? Let's bring our parents into the bedroom here, guys. But
already there.
yeah, knowing that here, not literally here. So we grab that, and then we ask ourselves, if we didn't feel that way about who we are in the world, what would we want to believe instead? So let's take the I'm alone example. If I believe I am alone and there's nobody there for me in this universe, perhaps my healing antidote phrase would be, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. I'm always here for you no matter what. So the individual has to come up with the healing antidote phrase and share that with the partner. And it's very important that the partner not add any of his or her own words to that healing antidote, because he may be coming from a helpful, loving place, but it's not his wound, it's not his pain. So he may be thinking that the added words are really helping, but in fact they are not. They're interfering with the healing psyche, the spiritual process that individual needs. So what happens is, it could be during lovemaking, but really, if one partner is just in receiving role, so that the sexual energy isn't reciprocal, it's just one person is giving love to the partner, and then they can flip it the following week and do it in reverse, But that person receiving, he will be rising her sexual energy, and she's just being vulnerable, being raw, and laying there, at first we would have to have educational kind of sex, so he knows what kind of touch is important to her, right? But she can also be masturbating or using a vibrator, and he can just be holding her lovingly in his arms up by the heart and space area. Space area is a good place to be for the partner, holding, embracing, if you go the masturbation route versus the partner pleasure route. And the partner will be saying to the person receiving that healing antidote phrase over and over again as she is climbing to climax. Whether or not she actually climaxes, that's not the focus. She may or she may not, or he may or he may not. But really revving up so that if climaxing is at a 10 on a 0 to 10 scale, you're hanging out at a 9, 9.5 with all that sexual energy, going through your body. Breathing deeply for the person receiving is also really important. And then the partner saying in the scenario that I gave, I'm here for you. I'm here for you no matter what. I am here for you. And just repeating that kind of mantra over and over again, maybe for 10 minutes, just however long, and while embracing the partner. Oftentimes, the person receiving will just be sobbing, because in that vulnerable space, hearing that, almost positive cognition about self that they never got as a child, and have been, through the course of life, found evidence to support that incorrect belief about themselves, and coming from a partner who you're in a relationship with and love and want to share in this life together on this spiritual journey is so profoundly healing. It's really amazing.
It is amazing. And my belief is that partners are partners in the healing process. That we commit, not only to our own healing, but to our partner's healing. And what you just described, I could actually see it happening, especially when you said that the person receiving is, is crying if the partner is just sort of, what do you call it? The reframing that experience for her, It's really,
Absolutely.
really beautiful. Yeah.
And not just that experience in and of itself, right? But yeah, the whole life experience of that.
Exactly.
Piece we perpetuate. Absolutely.
Right. Wow. It sounds fascinating. The program that you've developed. So I know we're going to be out of time soon. But are there any final thoughts or anything that you'd like our listening audience to know around the issue of sex? I know that's a huge question, but what is the message you'd like to leave our audience with?
I think the main pieces are to be open to learning and to walk through the fears and exposing vulnerability. And if you get slapped in the face, so be it. You tried. And hopefully you won't get slapped in the face. But, putting it out there and being raw and real. And it's important to put time aside for sex and to not withhold from our partners, but to really be openly available and loving and connecting and making time and space for that. And to leave criticism out of the bedroom, to use language that is positive and requests, and also not to go to blame, if there are any issues that surface, but rather look at it as a couple's journey and what both people's contributions are. But really the education and the vulnerability, the education about individuals' bodies, and open sex talk are the main things that I think are really, really important for couples. People can make excuses all the time. I'm too tired, the kids, this, that, the other, and it's about setting up priorities. Why does sex fall off the list? Why not bump sex up to the top of the list? And when I say sex, I don't just mean intercourse, right? But physical touch. Oh, I'll end on this, Paula. Touch is so important, and we don't realize we are too orgasm focused. And really this loving touch and touching with intention and touching with, I tell my clients that when they're touching somebody, if they're not feeling aroused themselves by giving their partner touch, then their partner is not feeling loved, because whether their mind is distracted or their energy isn't in their hands, but by touching somebody, you should be so present and connected that you are actually arousing yourself just from giving the love. And for men, I just want to clarify, it's not about I know men's arousal can climb when they see women climbing, right? And they see them, heightening in their pleasure. But it's not about that. That's not what I mean. Just connecting and real presence is so important. Thanks, Paula.
Yep, thanks. So, Lily, how can we follow your work and get in touch with you? I'm not sure. We didn't talk about a free gift to our listening audience. But first things first, how can our listening audience follow you?
Hopefully here I'll be starting up my podcast again shortly, and that is on iTunes and on YouTube and Vimeo and the video resources. I'm located in San Diego, and my website is www.lilylovecoach.com, LILYLOVECOACH.com. And I offer Skype sessions or in-person sessions or over the phone. But anywhere, and I have about 100 videos, I think, that are up there on various sexual topics. So iTunes or my website directly are the best ways.
Okay, great, Lily. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Paula. It was quite a pleasure.
You've been listening to The Relationship Revolution, where we've been discussing the topic Embracing Love's Paradox. The paradox is if we allow ourselves to sit with the discomfort, the tension of the opposites, that is the yes and the no, the light and the dark, often a third and surprising solution comes along that is better than any option we can imagine. If you've enjoyed this conversation, you can upgrade to VIP access. VIP access allows you to download and keep all the interviews to listen to at your leisure. To upgrade to VIP, go to www.paulasmith-relationshiprevolution/VIP. If you'd like to let your friends know about this free event series, go to www.paulasmith-relationshiprevolution.com or Facebook, key in Imago Providence.